Greetings, everyone. I'm happy to be with my brother and sister from Kenya. I'm looking forward to coming to Kenya. I'm looking forward to doing the Kenyan jump. What's the name of that tribe? The Maasai?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that and some Kenyan food. But today we're not talking about Kenyan culture, really. We're going to be talking about some real serious issues, the classroom and beyond, addressing the youth bulge in Kenya. I'm Benjamin Fraser. I have the honor of serving the CSA as its chairperson, and I'm going to allow my panel to introduce themselves, starting with Shireen.
Yes, so my name is Shireen Omondi. I was a former student leader at Moi University. I served as an academics director. And during my time, I was appointed as the Commonwealth Students Association Kenya representative. Later was nominated to serve as a steering committee in the Global Students Forum and represent the voices of the Commonwealth Students Association in the steering committee.
Thank you. And Muchemi?
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening from wherever you're joining us. My name is Mushemi Mureti. I currently serve as the Kenya Country Representative to the Commonwealth Students Association. Locally, I also serve as the Chief of Staff of the Kenya University Students Organization. I'm a student at the University of Nairobi, a world-ranked university. Sherin may agree with me, a student of economics there, currently in my final year.
Okay, wonderful. So we have past Kenya Rep, present Kenya Rep. Yes. So a little bit about KUSO. Tell us about the organization, Muchemi.
Well, the Kenya University Students Organization is the national students organization locally, and we serve as a semi-autonomous organization working closely with key industry partners. That includes government and non-government organizations. We are now on record for being in service for over 2 decades, with turning tenures here and there and elections here and there that sometimes are closely affected by local elections in the 77 universities that we have across the Republic of Kenya. Essentially, the committee that runs the Kenya University Students Organization is one that is comprised of a team that showcases the diversity of the Kenyan people. In the Republic of Kenya, we have universities from across every corner that is here. So we try as much as possible in the National Secretariat. In the formation of the National Secretariat, we have quite a diverse formation. That is, we even have regional representatives, actually, in some points, in areas where we have a high concentration of institutions of higher learning, such as the metropolitan and cosmopolitan areas, we have more than just one representative. We seek, in the bigger picture, to have a representative organization that represents that beauty and the tapestry that is in the nature of the Republic of Kenya. So, secondly to that, the Kenya University Students Organization was pivotal in the formation of the East Africa Students Union that was birthed in 2021 in November. We started running then, and the current president of the Kenya University Students Organization as well serves as the president of the East Africa Students Union. You may very well be cognizant of the country representative from Uganda, Julia Mhumuza, and alongside other fellows from Uganda and others from Tanzania, that is Tahliso and Unsa, who are very sentimental in the formation of the East Africa Students Union. Within this period, we take great pride in us forging and fostering conversations that promote regional contributions to the growth of the people and the society at large.
How old is KUSO?
KUSO is now over 2 decades old.
Oh, really?
Slightly just above 2 decades.
Okay. So tell me about some of the achievements of KUSO.
I just noted one of them, which is continuously being a pace setter and setting precedences in fostering regional balance and regional cooperation that is within the East African community. Secondly, we have that nature in which we have established a structure whose framework is built on the regional balance, that our leadership within the Kenya University Students Organization tells of the tapestry in the diversity of the peoples of the Republic of Kenya. You may as well know, Attorney Fraser, Mr. Fraser, that within the Republic of Kenya, we have over 40 different languages that are spoken across the Republic of Kenya. We as well have over 47 counties across the Republic of Kenya. So it is quite a balance. It's quite some piece of work trying to balance regional representation on a national body such as the Kenya University Students Organization. Thirdly, in the last 5 to 6 years, we have seen a very vibrant Kenya University Student Organization beyond the front line to champion and lead in advocacy for students and the matters that affect them locally. We have had cases in which students were denied the very basic right to attend classes for some malignant reasons by institutions of higher learning. Well, the Kenya University Students Organization has time and again come in handy at the point where the students needed the organization to deliberate these processes and to make students able to attend classes and receive the services that they have paid for through fees, and as well in certain times such as the Higher Education Loans Board, where sometimes we experience delays in disbursement of public funds. CUSO has been very instrumental in ensuring that students get their money, get their loans on time so that they are able to attend to their classes as early as possible. Finally, CUSO maintains a very open policy in which we welcome stakeholders, and we have been establishing this point of nexus between key industry partners and institutions of higher learning to see how best we can produce market-ready graduates, continuously advocating for companies both locally and internationally to offer internship programs, attachment programs for students, and as well championing for exchange programs for students to just leave the Republic of Kenya and go out there, go to China, go to the United States, go to Russia, go to France, and be able to interact with the rest of the world and gain a few nuggets here and there. We commonly say that he who does not travel widely will end up marrying his sister, thinking that she's the only girl in the world. So we are trying now to get that other girl out there, and we are working with what we have locally, because, you know, Fraser, if a woman gives birth to triplets, she will not ask God for a third breast. She will work with what she has. So we are trying to work with what we have locally, though it's not sufficient at some points, but we are trying to increase the human capacity of our student leadership, as well as, you know, empowering them to go to the next level, to take the game to the next bar.
Thank you. And finally, on CUSO, tell us briefly about the relationship that CUSO has with the government of Kenya, because it's very important that we know, you know, how you're able to cooperate with your most important stakeholder.
Well, as I said earlier, we have this very informed and well set up structure within which the Kenya University Students Organization appreciates the cooperation between the organization, institutions of higher learning, and key industry partners. And one of those key industry partners is government itself. We cannot by any means assume the role that can be played by government in achieving the mandate and the vision of CUSO. So we attempt to the best of our ability to be politically right. And in times when it is questionable, we sit on the fence for us to be as flexible as possible. Why I'm saying when sometimes it's quite tight. Last year, the Republic of Kenya witnessed a transitional government where we were bidding goodbye to a previous regime that had been very friendly to the Kenya University Students Organization. That regime happened to have been supporting another presidential candidate, and so CUSO, as an outfit, had to stand on the fence a little bit and to be ready for the transitional government. In material, I'm talking about as being prepared for the future. That we have been very cognizant that the current government, the incumbent government, might be in government for the next 9 to 10 years. So we have been very prepared. And what we have done is continuously reaching out to government and as well offering platforms and avenues where we can support government achieve its mandate. That way, we are leaving government indebted to us to support us. As well, I informed the committee on another matter as we come to the year of the youth matter, that we have already reached out to government and especially the Cabinet Secretary for Education, Honorable Ezekiel Machogu, and as well the Principal Secretary of Higher Education, Dr. Masi Nyangala. And we are looking at means in which we can have government consistently and significantly involved in the generation of market-ready, well-skilled, and well-informed graduates who are leaving our institutions of higher learning. So yes, Mr. Fraser, that partnership between us and government is very key. We consider it to be very of vital importance to us, because we have to maintain it with a delicate sense of precision.
Yes, thank you. Well, to Shireen, in this next segment, my question to you: the government provides free primary and secondary education in Kenya. I want you to tell me about the state of primary and secondary education within the context of SDG 4, quality education. Yes, it's free, but is it to a standard that is acceptable? What are some of the strengths and weaknesses in primary and secondary education? And from your perspective as an advocate, what are some of the solutions proposed?
Thank you, Benjamin, for allowing me to talk about that specific part. I am a teacher by profession, trained and registered. The government of Kenya is offering free education, but as a well-traveled young person, I feel that it's not free. Because, for example, in primary education, you have to pay for registration. For example, if you're getting admitted into school, that admission alone, comparing to the economy in our country today, that admission money alone is something that most of the households cannot afford. But I will commend the government for being able to give textbooks, which is very important. Enough textbooks to children, so we don't have children sharing textbooks or having assignments and they are not able to work with what they don't have. But right now, the government has really worked and ensured that every child has a textbook. And there's no sharing of textbooks. So that's a good thing. But on the other hand, is that the former government, and this is why we say that political temperatures sometimes affect our economy as a country, because the former president or the former government was working on changing the curriculum, and the new government was coming on board and they wanted to change or change some of the policies that were being implemented already. And when this happens, the children are the ones being affected. That's one. And two, the teachers are also being affected, because then they have to change and be trained again. So there is a lot of confusion between the parents, the teachers, and the children. And this is very unfair for the children. And the government, there was even an article that I put out on one of our newspapers. And of course, the current government said that they were going to ensure that education is free, and also ensure that their manifesto covered that specific area, right? And so, but there was something missing from their manifesto, was the way in which they were going to implement the competency-based curriculum, which right now is the right system, I think, but we still don't have the resources to implement that in different parts of the country. For example, when you're talking about digital education and some of the places do not have electricity, or some of the places do not have access to internet, then it means children from the rural background, for example, will not have access to these particular nice things. And children in the public, or for example, in the urban areas, then would have access to these particular things. Now, in the recommendations of what, so a committee was formed. The president formed a committee which had different experts, which was a good thing. But the committee came out with different recommendations, and one of the things that didn't sit really well with the country is that the government has increased school fees for secondary education. Initially, the day schoolers, because we have the boarding and the day school, so the day schoolers were being asked to pay 12,000 Kenya shillings And this was easier or a little bit understandable because then the parent is allowed to pay 1,000 Kenya shillings every month for the next 1 year. Now it has been increased, and that means that despite also the economy being very difficult on everyone and parents as well, and because they have other children to take care of, they have to increase more money for these particular children. So parents decide to not take care of their children, and then there is a high rate of children dropping out of school, which will lead us to the question that you are going to ask us on unemployment, which I will later comment on. When we come back to the question on what are some of the strength is that we are getting money from international organizations to support the education sector, which is a good thing. But there's going to be a tendency of dependency on donor fund. And as somebody who's been training young people on budget making processes, I think our governments are rich. We have the resources, but they just choose to put something else as a priority. And education is never their priority. And when education is not a priority for a country, then it means young people will suffer. They will not be educated, and then the economy will not be as rich as it should be when everyone is educated. As an advocate of education, I believe that the government has all the money to pump into the education sector uh, to allow young people to have the skills that they need. The competency-based curriculum, which is being introduced right now, is a good thing because then the student is not being forced to just learn what is there, but they're given the opportunity to learn and grow in their skills. So if the government can pump enough resources from a very young age to these particular children, then we are going to have a more skilled community, a more skilled country, and then we will be able to have industrialization, pumped up and revenue being collected and all that stuff about the economy. Um, the weaknesses, the strengths we have is that there is enough money coming in for us from international donors, and that's a good thing. We have, good people giving us money, but the weaknesses is that we are not prioritizing this as a country. We don't have enough money for research and development, and these are some of the things that actually help the country grow, because we all know what research does to the country. Now, some of the solutions or recommendations that I would suggest to the government is to put more money into the education sector and not treat education as a private institution. It's a public institution, and when every child is educated, the community is educated. So the privatization of education should just end. The government should give its priority to education. That way, it's going to be easier for young people to navigate the system. Another recommendation is there is a plus for having textbooks to schools, enough textbooks. Now we need to get that money again to employing more teachers, increase salaries to these teachers, because without teachers, there is no education. And then cut down on the school fees right now, because with the increase of the school fees, there is not going to be any education to be offered to anyone, because then everyone will be dropping out of school. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Shireen. So those are the recommendations for the primary and secondary side. From the tertiary perspective, Buchemi, what policy recommendations does KUSA have to improve tertiary education in Kenya?
Well, primarily, I will agree with my predecessor, Shireen, that indeed matters of research and funding and financing of the education sector in the Republic of Kenya is an alien industry. And why I say it's an alien industry is we are a third world country, but just Shireen saying that we are in the danger of developing the mannerism or the habit of being dependent on donor aid. We're already dependent. That's the reality. And the moment that we shall realize how badly the disease or the malady of dependence has caught up with us is the moment we realize how much of a potential crisis it is to our future generations. Well, as far as tertiary institutions are concerned, I will speak one particular factor, that education is a system of ladders where you go up a stair by stair. I'll take in and also second the recommendations made by Shireen as far as basic education is concerned across the Republic of Kenya. There is need for us to revise the manner in which we deliver education to the people. Right to education is a very inalienable right of every Kenyan. And we feel that, no, Mr. Fraser, the Republic of Kenya operates under devolution, and most key functions of national government have been devolved to the county governments. But education still is a function of the national government, and that has made education to be more prone to cartels and everything. And if we are going to consolidate efforts to make education sector quite better, privatization might not be particularly the way, but I will agree with one key industrial innovation that has been coming lately in the education sector, the commercialization of education. Can we open up education institutions to the general public for access? Let us not just lock it out to those that are publicly accessible to the people. I believe that commercializing education is a plus in the industry. However, could this commercialization as well come in the manner of boosting research kitties? A lot of our university and tertiary institution students do not understand the need for research, the need for taking part in research. I'll give you the example of where I'm a student at the University of Nairobi. We have seen the growth and the establishment of a robust research kitty at the University of Nairobi. The numbers are now going into billions, and nowadays the university is awarding members of faculty as well as students who intentionally and significantly take part in research, in the conduct of research, because research is the anchor upon which education and academia is built on. So firstly, I will go with broadening research institutions. Maybe we need to assess how effective the education that we have been offering to our people is to the generations that are coming, both contemporarily and futuristically. And I speak in a manner where, until today, Mr. Fraser, we don't have a university within the Republic of Kenya that is offering artificial engineering, and it's a concern for me. It's a huge concern, because if our graduates and our engineers have to be market ready, they have to be able to match up to the skill set of those that are coming from the rest of the globe. There needs as well to be robust knowledge transfer between the developed world and those of us who come from developing nations such as the Republic of Kenya. There needs to be more channels and more avenues that are enabled for members of faculty and researchers to exchange on a peer-to-peer approach basis as well. So I remember sitting last year by the Commission for University Education here locally, as well as with the Technical and Vocational Education and Training Authority locally, that spoke into the future of education in the Republic of Kenya. And the sentiments that were shared in that sitting by the Kenya University Students Organization was the voice of us needing to revamp the education sector in the Republic of Kenya. Could we assess the curriculum that we have? Could we modify it to answer the questions of today and to answer the questions of the future? Because most of the things that we are teaching currently was what was taught in institutions of higher learning about 2, 3, 4 decades ago at the point of independence in the Republic. And today now the challenges that we face as a race and as a nation have diversified, and they have become more contemporary and more challenging, because they're becoming more challenging because we have not just prepared our labor market to be skilled to solve these challenges. And I'm looking at challenges of the future. You saw how much damage the COVID-19 pandemic struck the world with. And I feel it's because we were not prepared that in this time and age, we can still be attacked biologically. There can be what do I say? A disease that will ravage through the entire world and turn the world upside down, question and put the survival of mankind to the test, as well put the social aspect of mankind to the test. Finally, I'm going to speak into the question of financing. And financing, the budgeting and appropriation of resources to institutions of higher learning is very, very wanting. I was disappointed, as Shireen mentioned, the Presidential Working Party on Educational Reforms. I was disappointed that amongst them sat knowledgeable members of the academia, and as well, one of them was my Vice Chancellor, Professor Gitahi Kiama. And the recommendations that these people made were not in the manner of diversifying the funding of institutions of higher learning, both public and private, because we need to understand that the society, our society, is built on the potential fruits of education. Therefore, we need to caution institutions of education to be more stable in the future, and as well to be able to look into the future. They need resources. We need prospectors and futuristic research into what will sell in the market, what challenge might most probably strike humankind in 50 years. Looking into that, if we align ourselves to that, we'll feel that there is a huge need to facilitate institutions of higher learning, to make them able for the future, to make them establish facilities that will caution them in the case, such as the case of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we saw institutions being locked down and for a year or two, students not being able to access education in a conducive environment. Many people struggling with hybrid learning, and some institutions were actually giving education to people, teaching students on a completely virtual platform. And you wonder, how does an engineering student take an engineering course for 2 years, the third year and the fourth year virtually, and this person is supposed to be on ground with their instructor, with their lecturers, getting to learn this with the first-hand experience? Again, it speaks into the question of how much resources are available to our institutions of higher learning. And I feel we need to consolidate this. We need to take this question and this topic very seriously for the sake of our future generations.
I think this brings us to a nice segue into the next section of the discussion, which is on unemployment. So Kenya is facing a youth bulge. 75% of the Kenyan population, which is approximately 53 million people, 75% of that 53 million is aged below 35 years old. Youth unemployment in Kenya is as high as 35%. 4.5 million young men and women compared to the overall national unemployment rate of 10%. Starting with you, Muchemi, what are your recommendations to address youth unemployment? And I'd also like Shireen to answer the same question after you're through.
Employment, to me, occurs as an economist, occurs when there is a huge supply of skills in the market, whereas the demand for those skills is very short-changed. So we find a scenario where we have a surplus of skilled labor out there in the market. A huge part of the percentage of the population that is unemployed within the Republic of Kenya, you'll find millions and hundreds of thousands of graduates from universities. So these are skilled people. And the market particularly was not prepared to accept them. I'm looking at the example of countries such as Japan and Germany, where the demand for the labor demand is higher than the labor supply. And you find countries such as Japan being in a danger where within a few decades, there will no longer be young people, productive young people who are well skilled to be fed into their industry. So these people are coming to Africa. And Kenya particularly, we are on the east coast of Africa, and we are directly being challenged by the geographical east of the world, that we need to create a demand for this skill set. The danger is not that young people are not educated, Mr. Fraser. Young people indeed are educated, they are skilled. But number one, the demand for that labor in the market is very little. It's marginal. Let me say, the numbers are very low. And that is why you see a graduating class of 5,000 students, graduates, and only about 100 or 200 of them get to directly transition from institutions of higher learning into the working place. What are the potential solutions? I will not. I will say that.
May I intercept you here? Tell me.
Okay.
Before we get to the solution, is it that there are industries in Kenya that have a shortage of labor and the students don't want to work in them, or is it that there aren't any jobs available in any of the industries at all? What is the situation?
The situation in material is that we have a surplus of labor, skilled labor, but a shortage of the for that labor.
I know.
So industries.
Yeah, all right, go ahead.
The opportunities for these young people to tap and just not there. And we are finding the will, if you've been going with the metrics locally here, we have a growing number of startups across the Republic of Kenya. And most of these startups are 2, 3, 4 university graduates getting to come together, 4, 5 software engineers, 4, 5 economists, 4, 5 doctors getting to come together and realizing that there is nowhere we can go ask for work. So we will create work for ourselves. So they come up, they build an idea, they look for an investor, and becomes a startup. There are millions of startups in the Republic of Kenya right now. But again, where the rubber meets the road in the case of startups is that most of these startups don't have sufficient or sustainable capacity to hire other staff. So we find startups that are hiring a staff of 3, 4 people. So is it really speaking into the numbers or speaking into the solution that we are looking for with the magnitude of the Republic of Kenya, where we have about 30 million young people? It's not speaking directly. It's not directly speaking into what is available. Secondly, we have this what do you say? It's a mishap. It's a career or skill mishap somewhere, where you find the market particularly needs something, but the graduates who are available don't have that particular thing or that feature that the market is asking for. For example, in about 2, 3, 4 years, companies have been commenting or lamenting that there is a shortage of data scientists in the market.
Okay.
And now you find most of the graduates in the university or across the Republic of Kenya in those recent times, and not just skilled in what is lucrative in the market, what is needed in the market at that time. So I think it's a twofold scenario. Either we have too much supply of skills and labor and a low demand of it, or on the other side, this mishap between what the market needs and what is readily available for the market to uptake.
Okay, I got the answer to my question. So one of the industries where they need more labor is data science. What about agriculture? What about teaching?
Well,
the hospitality industry?
Well, Mr. Fraser, when you come to Kenya in February, I will have the distinct pleasure of taking you around the country for maybe 2, 3, 4 hours, and you will come to interact with the potential that the Republic of Kenya has with agriculture. We have a very favorable climate, but within the society of the peoples of Kenya, we have defined agriculture to be a career or a profession for the old. So essentially, we have painted the farming and taking part in agriculture as a career that you only take up once you have done your career, you have reached your peak, you have retired. Now you go work in the agriculture sector. That is how we have painted, and I blame that on society, because it is possible for a young person to immerse themselves into smart agriculture and produce employment for other young people, while it's significantly contributing to the gross domestic product of the Republic of Kenya. We have as well observed a growing trend with community-based organizations that are going into smart agriculture. I'll note one by the daughter of the President of the Republic of Kenya, Charlene Ruto. She has created Smarts Foundation, which is going into mechanized agriculture and urging young people to now shift the focus from white-collar jobs to agriculture, because we hold agriculture to be the backbone of our economy. And given how naturally we are endowed as a republic, and geographically, we cannot be a country that experiences food shortage and drought and cases where people don't have enough food. While we have a productive part of the demographics of our republic, a sprawling percentage of very energetic and very ingenious people, young people. I'm speaking particularly about the youth. We can now channel their focus to agriculture. But at the same time, being in the industry for a while, I genuinely feel that there is a need for us to incentivize the transition from the focus from white-collar jobs to agriculture. We have to at least hold their hands, bring them onto the industry, because it's not an industry that is known to be a young people industry. So now I think we need to incentivize it, make it easier for them to access funding, for them to start up farms, as well to access funding for the resources they need for the farms, such as inputs, fertilizers, pesticides and everything. And as well, I think we need to incentivize it in a manner of providing knowledge to young people that agriculture can become the way. And I'm particularly speaking into agriculture because I feel there's so much potential we hold as a country, agriculture-wise. Our climate favors us. You will see when you come here to Kenya, Mr. Fraser, that there is more that we can achieve, but we need to now shift the focus. We need to shift the lens from working in offices and making millions and being able to generate impactful, insignificant impact on the society through agriculture, as well as other careers. But all of this, such as teaching and engineering and medicine and the law profession and economists and professors, they are somewhat these are white collar jobs. Agriculture is the way to go for us as a generation, and I've consistently been calling on young people. Let us come together, join hands, see what we can do with 1 acre, 2 hectares, what's possible for us to engage in agriculture, to learn and be able to be productive and give back to society well.
Thank you. I will be coming back to share my thoughts on that part, because you hit the nail on the head, I believe, for several countries, not just Kenya. What is your contribution here, Shireen? What are your recommendations to address youth unemployment in Kenya? Oh, Shireen, you're mute.
Okay. So youth unemployment in Kenya has led as a result of so many factors, and most of them has been said by my colleague. Skill mismatch, which was clearly stated. The number of graduates the universities send out every year is not the same as what we have in the labor, like what the labor market needs. So there is more to less. The ratio is very imbalanced. We also have the curriculum part, which is also one of the factors that leads to youth unemployment. The curriculum, and especially in the university, is we don't have skill-based curriculum. We are still working with the colonial curriculum, which was to teach us, to just have white-collar jobs. And so we have stuck to that, and there is nothing that we are working towards as a government or as a country to actually change that. So lack of infrastructure, meaning at the end of the day, learners cannot harness their fullest potential. We also have limited investments in vocational training centers. And I don't know if this is true, but I feel like our country, so because I've worked with the budget, I've worked or trained young people on budget making processes. One of the things that has been very clear during all this time is that education is not really a priority, both at the national government and at the county level. So we have to always bring in a donor. And one of the donors that has really stood out for investing in vocational training centers is the GIZ, which is a German company. And they have been training and investing in, the local vocational training centers and paying scholarships for young people to really go there. So these places or these centers would give lots of young people an opportunity to ignite creativity and explore blue collar jobs, and this has also been affected by the attitude that young people have towards vocational training centers. Just like my colleague has said, that we see vocational training centers as a place where only people who've not passed their exams or failures go to. And so when you advise a young person to go there, they'd be like, why do I need to go there? And I worked so hard. So the attitude towards that needs to be worked on, and we need to talk more to young people. I know so many organizations that are currently doing that, and even the government that are currently doing capacity building for these particular opportunities. And so young people's attitude is changing, but the rate at which it's changing is very low. Industrialization also has been said by my colleague, which is with the youth bulge, there will be need to increase number of industries to accommodate as many young people as it can. As at now, because one of the manifestos that our government had was reviving industries, but that 1 year down the line, that we've not seen anything towards that direction. And even if there is, there have been criticism towards how the government, or how the policies that surround that particular um, factor. And so young people feel like whatever the government is saying, they are not committing to it, and they are discouraged. And most people are actually leaving the country. A graduate who's graduated, has got his first class, or has that skill that the country needs, uses it in another country. And instead, if we would just have kept them in our country, and that revenue would have gone to the government. However, there are efforts by the government to promote youth entrepreneurship. For example, such as the Hustler Fund, which was launched, I think, sometime this year or last year, I'm not sure, which offers financial solution targeting people at the bottom. They call it bottom up. And however, there is need for development of youth inclusive policies. Why? Because the government, for me as a young person who's worked with young people, I feel like the government is not doing need assessment. So they just sit and say, this is what we think the young people need. Or even if the data is collected, I don't think if it's true to what is actually happening at the grassroots. So the youth inclusive policies, as much as there are also youth inclusive policies that exist right now, but the implementation level is very low. And the governance structure within the entrepreneurship sector. So just like I've said that the government needs to do some need assessments for all their programs. And I know they have the money to employ, monitoring and evaluation experts to tell them what these particular things have. And even if I think they are not taking them seriously. And so there's a lot of political conversations and like what needs to be done. So the youth face a practical and regulatory barriers to participate in entrepreneurship and trade. And this needs to be addressed through youth responsive trade policies. How many young people know what trade policies are there for example, for East Africa? How many young people know that we can do trade with Tanzania? How many young people know that we need to have like open border trade, right? So are these policies being shared down to the young people, or is it us sticking to the curriculum and what the curriculum say, and nobody tells the young people that, oh, apart from you being a teacher, you can actually do trade, and we have money for you, because we also have something from the that the national government has brought down to the constituencies. And for example, Uwezo Fund, which I know my colleague knows, but there's a lot of bureaucracy to even access that particular fund. Whom do you know? Like you have all these long processes that you need to access the fund with. You are a citizen, but there's so many bureaucracy. There's a lot of bureaucracy around these particular funds, and young people end up not getting these resources. And those people who know, for example, for the young people who know, they keep on going for the money, and the other ones who do not know do not get access to the money. A lot of capacity building needs to be done, a lot, and I mean a lot. Like the government needs to put out resources for this, to do a lot of capacity building for young people, for those who are very smart and those who are average, for them to understand that there is money being brought down every year. And when you don't use this money, it goes back to the government. So young people really need to put their heads out there. And at the same time, the government needs to meet us in the middle. And so there's also the need for urgent, foster entrepreneurial ecosystems such as agribusiness hubs to bridge education, research, and industry, and also offer mentorship, funding, which I've said some of the funding that the government gives, and market access to women and youth startups. Focused on agri solutions. I have a friend who works for an international organization based in Italy that works with agri or entrepreneurship, and they look for funding, and then they call on young people who have startups, and then they give them resources. But you see, it's the responsibility of the government to actually give these opportunities to young people. But other people from other places are coming in to take care of us. It's a good thing. They're creating opportunities for young people, but the government should not. It's like a father leaving the child to a stranger, yet yet the father has the capacity to take care of that particular child. So we still are calling out the government to take the responsibility of all the young people of the country, of the Republic of Kenya. um, just like my colleague has said, there is so much potential for agriculture in Kenya, but we still have cartels coming in and selling, expired items to young people or even farmers. Or we have some of the government officials sabotaging farmers. And so there is very little that the farmer gets. And they end up saying, instead of losing all this money to buying, fertilizers or seeds or all that, let me just use this money to do other things apart from agriculture, because then agriculture has already been eaten up by the cartels. So this still goes back to the government. And then youth are the core of the solution to food insecurity. And so there's a need for multi-stakeholder effort, to support investment in sustainable agriculture. Climate smart agriculture, it's a conversation. Everyone is talking about it. My colleague has talked about it. Practices for youth farmers to produce more resilient crops. Who is telling us about resilient crops? Because I did agriculture in school, but it was, how to plant, how to, what to put where, very basic. But then you come out and you need that skill and more of it. So also provide incentives and subsidies for agricultural inputs like fertilizer. I know the European Union has come really hard on supporting Kenya in the agriculture sector, and especially coming up with policies and recommendations on some of the fertilizers that should not be used, or especially those that are affecting climate action. And also finally, on the same recommendation then would be to promote equitable financial inclusion through public-private partnership, which is a good thing the government is doing right now, for tailored climate resilient financial packages, such as de-risking agriculture. And that means bringing in the market what would then make farmers yield more, and then favorable insurance products. Farmers don't have insurance, and if they do, they have to be really rich farmers. And then microfinance models to support youth in agribusiness. Yeah.
Thank you, Shireen. I would like each of you in 2 minutes to respond to a student who wants to study maybe political science or zoology or some degree with a very narrow scope of opportunity, but because of passion, they want to study that area. What is your response? Noting, very importantly, that students should have academic autonomy. You should pursue your passion. Education is not just to make you an employee. Education is to develop you as a whole. But there is a sensitive balance of you need to be able to eat. If you want to have children, you need a job to put food on the table. Your passions don't always mean food and bills being paid. So how do we manage that delicate balance? In 2 minutes, respond to that student, Muchemi.
Well, with as far as passions go and preferential choices of careers are concerned, you as well have to stay with. You can work with your passion, yes, work with your passion. We won't deny you the right to work with your passion, but stay with work such that you buying into your passion does not make you get considered a madman. Because in this very dynamic world, there are some things that studying today and preparing to studying them without a clear goal or a precise eye on the ball. But this indeed is what I want. Without that precise focus on the bullseye, you might end up wasting your time. But my advice to anybody who wants to go the passion way is craft then something that will make you comfortable with, with just generating adequate resources for your survival. Because the question is becoming survival today. With the cost of living that we're experiencing, even globally, the question is becoming survival. It's not even becoming luxury and surpluses. Or can you hear me clearly now?
That's better.
Okay. So I was saying the question particularly right now is not about leisure or luxury. It's about survival. And when the question is survival, then you have to go to school to study something, get skills that will enable you survive. That's a question I always put across to anybody who comes for career advice. First, are you comfortable doing what you want to do? Would you be happy doing what you want to do? Do you feel as if what you want to study will make you feel complete? Will it make you feel accomplished as an individual, both goal-wise and ambition-wise? Then take it if at all it ticks all these boxes. And as well, the question of survival.
Shireen, what about you? How do you counsel with that student?
First, I think the culture we've been brought up in, and this is in context with Kenyan students, the culture we've been brought up in is that there are better professions, there are good professions than the other. For example, we would be made to believe that doctors are better than teachers, right? Or, you know, engineering is better than economists, being an economist. So then a student works towards what pleases the community. What will I be called? Will I be called a doctor? Will I be called an engineer? And we forget then that there is more to it than just being an engineer and a doctor. I am not an engineer. I am not a doctor. When I started being a teacher, I didn't like it. But then in it, I learned that there's so much than just teaching that you can actually do as a young person. And we still need career development and career encouragement when it comes to that specific area. Because, like we said, curriculum affects much of whom we are when we are young adults. So, what I would tell a young person out there is do it. The most important thing is to be educated. When you're educated, then you have the skills and the wisdom to know which direction you can take with it. I know of so many founders who are getting donor money or getting money from the government, but they were not what they are. Like they studied sociology, for example, and what they're doing now is totally different, and they're doing very well. They have employed other young people and doing amazing things for the community. So the thing is to just do it, and in due time, or in the course, when you continue to find out what you really want, you will actually know that it's important to have the education. Other things will follow. So yeah.
Absolutely. And as young people, this is applicable to whatever country you're from. We should be flexible. We should be open to changing course. We should be open to opportunities available and give our best in the spaces that we find ourselves in. You know, I think to myself, well, you know, when you're in grade 7 or the first year of the high school and you introduce yourself to the class and you're supposed to say what you want to become, very few people stand up and say, I want to be a policeman. Very few people stand up and say, I want to be someone working in customer service. Right now, the business processing output sector in Jamaica, for example, employs a large number of young people. Nobody really gets up and says, you know, respectfully, Shireen, in my experience, hardly anybody ever got up and said, I want to be a teacher. But if these are opportunities that are available, And these are spaces that you find yourself in. Give it your best. That's what I would encourage young people to do. Whatsoever your hands find to do it with all your might. If it means that this is a transitional opportunity, that is for a period in your life where you're building up and working towards your ultimate goal, so be it, but give it your best. Yes, there is skills mismatch. You may have a degree that is not being used in the space that you're in, but even if it's not being utilized, give it your best. Yes, I don't want to exhaust the point, but it's something I feel very strongly about. Now, my next question, which we're coming to a close, is about safety and security. Now, there was a situation a few years ago in 2015. There was a massacre of 147 students on a Kenyan university. The students were killed during protests and I believe recently a student was killed during a protest on the high cost of living. That was sometime this year. What is your position on the safety and security of students in Kenya? Sorry.
Okay, so the 147 students, may their souls rest in peace, were students from a constituent before that time. It was a constituent university of my university, which was Moi University. Right now it's accredited and it's a university on its own. What happened during that time is very traumatizing. People have never healed. Every year they still celebrated that, and we still remember them as a country. After what the Al Shabaab did in that institution, I believe students really do not need to pay for the sins of our governments. Students are it's like a child. When you kill a child, to pay the sins of the parents. And we still call out on the people who did that and encourage the government protects students. On the issue of protection or security when it comes to the government to individual students, I believe students are the backbone of any country. And independence in my country, for example, was achieved by students being in the forefront. People like James Orengo, Senior Counsel James Orengo, who are at the forefront of ensuring that we gained independence as a country, going to the streets. And students all over the world have led in so many demonstrations and made things work. So the loss of the 147 students was not a good thing, has never been a good thing, and that's why we still remember them. But what happened, the kind of response the government gave those particular students was not really good. Because then if it was the president, for example, God forbid, it would have been very fast, very swift, and that would not have happened. But because they were students and nobody cared for them, it took forever for those students to be rescued. Now, I want to use a very relatable experience when it comes to solidarity. So many students in my country have been expelled, have been suspended, and their education has been cut short because the government feels like students are children and we should not hear what they say. I'm a very big critic of the government when it comes to students, how they handle students. I am one of the students who was expelled and suspended from university for fighting for the rights of students. When the university senate board sits down and say, from tomorrow you don't cook in the hostels, or from tomorrow the school fees has been increased. And so there are students who wake up in the morning and they work and they still go to class and they feed families back at home, and you don't wake up in the morning because you earn some thousands and say students are going to pay more school fees. You need to sit down there with their student leaders and talk about it. And when students decide to go, and demonstrate, you're supposed to protect them and not use the police to attack them. I was attacked, I was beaten by police officers for standing with other student leaders and calling out the university for, for trying to force things on the students. And I'm not the only one. There are so many students from Kenya who've gone through the same. We've gone to the streets when the government does not want to give us our money because it's the taxpayers' money, and delaying it, so that students are frustrated and they don't eat. Right now, and I think this is a call out to Kuso, is that they have failed as a student organization to actually call the government. The government right now has increased school fees in universities, right? And increased it like 3 times the normal amount. Students are dropping out. A very young person, and I saw it on national television where a young person, there are 4 boys staying in one house. They're saying they're sleeping hungry. When does education become a right? When does education become something that is helping the young people and the community? So also when it comes to the security of girls and young women, I think the government has also failed us. I don't know. The police officers are supposed to protect us. The universities are our guardians when we are in the university environment, right? And so when the university does not put security measures that protects women from being raped, that protects young people from being killed, then as a country we are falling back, and they need to be called out. There needs to be demonstration, because that's the only thing our government listens to, demonstrations. We've had, when I was serving as a student leader, there were girls being raped. And when we called on the security and told them, can you look at the security of women and even just all the students, the ones who are not staying in the school compound, and they were like, we have nothing to do because that is not our property. But we are your property, because now when you want to suspend students, you call our parents and say, oh, so this is your child. But when you're supposed to take care of us as an institution, you let us die or do things on our own. So I think I am still very bitter with how institutions take care of students, and students don't need to die when they need to be taking care of the security of this particular student. So I still call on Kuso. They need to do more. They need to stop going in bed with the government and call out the government when they need to call out the government, and protect the students.
You have 24 hours to respond, Mochemi. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I get the call from no. I get the call from Shavin that we need to do more. Well, you take me back to Garissa, and I remember yesterday when I represented a section of young people at the British High Commissioner's residence at the reception of the King, at the invitation of the High Commissioner, Mr. Neil Wigan, yesterday afternoon. And I remember the King Charles III noting that the security of our peoples, both the British and Kenyan, is a collective initiative that the two states and the two nations need to take up together collectively. I pick as well that what happened in Garissa on the 2nd of April in 2015 was a tragedy, and a tragedy of our time, because since when do we see young people pursuing education being persecuted for the very thing that makes them human, just breathing? Because there was no other reason for persecuting those 147 very bright, very brilliant, very promising souls in Garissa. And I feel the pain further, Mr. Fraser, because the date as well coincided with my 16th birthday. So it was quite a pain. It's quite a pain as well that I carry until today, that it could have been me in a university lecture or just loitering around campus, and I lose my life in that instance. And secondly, further than that, I had Shireen speak into the decisions that are made by national government. I mentioned that even in the wake of devolution in the Republic of Kenya, 13 years now down the line, we still have education as a national government function. It is one of those major functions that have not yet been devolved. We have seen healthcare being devolved to county governments, but education still, and I think that's where now the quagmire is coming into the picture, where we see many counties and many sub-counties across the Republic of Kenya struggling to deliver the new model of education, that is the competency-based curriculum model. They are struggling because they don't have capacity to deliver. The government, the national government, and I'll say this, our central government is in the business of always dodging a blow by closing its eyes instead of just moving your head. That's how you dodge a blow. You can't dodge a blow by just closing your eyes. But they're in the business of making decisions in boardrooms and well manicured terrains, and forgetting that these decisions speak into the lives of millions of people. It was a great New York governor who once commented on the propensity of politicians to campaign in poetry but to govern in prose. And I remember the Madam Chancellor of the British Parliament in 2011 when the American president visited Britain and spoke to the British Parliament at Westminster Bay. And she noted that to govern, that poetry is important because it gives the value and the strength in government, both by the governing and the governed. My professor Shireen keeps on mentioning manifestos and all, and I'm afraid to inform her that politicians campaign in poetry but tend to govern in prose. It's a reality that we must prepare ourselves as a society. It's a reality as well that we must face. But as far as education is concerned, and the security of young people, especially those who are institutions of higher learning, is concerned, it's a continuous tragedy. And as far as we see national security agencies always taking the photos and saying that we have signed this charter, we have signed a memorandum of understanding with this institution to deliver these services to young people, to make schools more secure. What I think is we do more of the journalism part of it. We forget to be intentional as well. When we keep on calling on the government, Shireen, I will return you to the words of the late American president, John F. Kennedy, when he said, don't ask what the government can do for you. Don't ask what the country can do for you. Ask what you can do for the country. Because if we rely on this country, if we rely on government and those who are in political offices, we'll end up just spreading our hands and never receiving anything. These people are in the business of making themselves better. And I think it's a tradition that we have to do away with. This reminds me of the words of the great Nigerian singer Femi Anipola Pokuti when he said, "Teacher, don't teach me nonsense because you have taught me nonsense for too long." I think we need to re-educate our people. We need to re-educate our young people. We need to make them more aware of the contemporary matters that affect society today. We need to make them aware that there needs to be a change of guard. We cannot be business as usual. We have already seen how much damage, the modus operandi that government has taken into place, the measures that government has put in place. We have seen how much damage they can do to society. We have as well seen the fracas that is left behind in the aftermath. So we need to prepare our young people more. And how do we prepare them more? We need to expose them that it is possible for you to occupy a political office and do things in a more intentional manner. What I'm calling on intentionality is, I think some of the policies that are really put into policy in this republic are just put into policy because government wants to, to make young people look like flower girls. And as well, we have a dangerous disease, and this is some sort of a pest or a parasite within the young population of young people who are in the business of rubber stamping whatever government does, whether it's favorable for us or not, whether it's favorable for future generations or not, whether it's favorable for our children and the children of our children. We have this parasite of young people who keep rubber stamping whatever government does. As well, Shireen noted that government is in the business of bringing on board policies that are not well researched. They are not responsive to the challenges of the population. But we still have that same parasite of young people who rubber stamp whatever government says. So I think it's a conversation It's a generational conspiracy that we have to pick up. It's a generational conversation as well that we have to pick up as the young generation and have within ourselves the dream of what we want to have as a country. I remember when the former chair of the AU, Lamine Zuma, invited Africa and came up with Africa Agenda 2063. And in it, Africa promised itself in generating by 2063 the Africa we want. And in it, we termed the milestones, and among them is quality education. But I don't see nations committing themselves to quality education on Africa. We need to be intentional with the policies we are taking up. We need to be very responsive with the avenues we are seeking as solutions to the challenges of our society.
Thank you. Shireen?
Yeah, so one thing that I want to say when all this is going on and this conversation continues to go on, because it's a conversation about students, I think we will be judged as the leaders before. We will be judged for what we have done and what we have not done. And that's why when you hold a position to lead students and young people, you need to do as much as you can and leave a legacy. Because when you do nothing, we will judge you because the future is waiting for you and your leadership does not end because you're a young person. And we will remind you that you failed us. Now, I want to go back a little bit to, and I know that's one of the things. Yeah, I can see you, Benjamin. I want to remind us, especially in Kenya right now, in this context, that when the delegate system was put into place, I don't know how other countries do it in the Commonwealth, but we had a very good system where it was very democratic. Young people would go and queue. I first joined university in 2015, so that's a long time ago. And young people would queue and vote for their candidate. But right now, it's the opposite. The delegate system has washed down what we would call democracy because then 5 students sit down and they decide who becomes the leader of the university. Do you know what that does to the university? And even for the students, is that nobody will ever represent their voices when they need it done. And all these consequences go back to the members of parliament, because this was a bill that was presented to parliament by a member of parliament who thought that by punishing a former, CUSO president, then that was going to happen. But we forget that that has affected the generations after him. And to see CUSO not really push for what needs to be done, as they call themselves a national student organization, we still call them to do what's right, right? I don't associate with it right now. I am not a student leader. I have no jurisdiction to comment on that. But as a leader who served before, I still feel like the leaders who followed after us need to come together again and give the power to the students. Because when the students do not have the power, that means the government has the power and they decide who gets where and who does what. And then now we've seen what is happening from the delegate system that was put into place is to have 5 people voting for one person or 7 people to lead the institution, and these 7 people are not qualified to lead, because then when they are told to present the issues of the people they are supposed to represent, they don't know anything because the people don't know about them. So I think this is, and as I end this conversation, is to just call on the CUSO leadership, and one of them is here, the CUSO leadership, to take up the mantle and do what's right for the voices of students in Kenya.
Thank you. Moshemi, you want to say something else?
I will be really brief with this. I hear my predecessor Shireen speak into the question of the delegate system, which has been a malady today, and the establishment or the institutionalization of the delegate system was something that happened during her time in campus. She will agree with me that it is indeed easier to direct or to control the growing of a tree while it is still a seedling than to control it once it is grown. We have a Swahili saying here locally that speaks into that. That once a tree is grown, it will be really hard and sometimes very futile to take it back to the stream, or maybe once water has lost its course, it's very hard to take it back mainstream. But that's not the point I wanted to put across. What I wanted to report to Shireen, and I will do this with sheer confidence, is that for the last 4 years, I have personally taken part in petitions to the National Assembly for the National Assembly to do away with the delegate system. You will be aware that I've been on national television for more than 10 times in the last 2-3 years, speaking about the draconian delegate system, because it's a malady that eats into the institution of democracy, because young people are growing up not to appreciate the fruits and the potential of taking part in democratic spaces. We need to open up democratic spaces for young people to be significantly engaged as well. We are experiencing nationally, we are experiencing electoral apathy by young people, and I think it feeds into that part where young people are not engaged in the formation of student council governments. How do you have 20 people beside a government that will represent the interest of 58,000 students at the University of Nairobi? It's ridiculous and it's outrageous at the same time. But while still at it, in 1975, at the realization of the independence of Mozambique, I remember Samora Moises Machel note the words that were sung by Miriam Makeba, Luta Continua. But he went beyond a Luta Continua and he asked the population, Control K. Yes, the battle continues, but against what does the battle continue? And that is the question that I want us to share across the divide. What are we facing today? What are we going to address? And I promise you, we need more energy. We need more support. Shireen, I'm speaking into your industry, the practitioners into your industry, because we have had these petitions go to government. I will, in the fullness of time as well, if it may be required, I will supply you with some of the documents that we have sent to the National Assembly in forms of petitions with the support of Senior Counsel Helen Kurauka and Senior Counsel Kelvin Koome and another one, Senior Counsel John Wangai. All of them advocates of the High Court, very experienced. They did the drafting work for us on a pro bono basis, because as well, you remember, KUSA is not funded by government locally. So we went to Parliament, but Parliament keeps on saying there are more pressing matters of national interest than this question. And again, the bigger challenge is the legislator who introduced this bill into Parliament is now this Cabinet Secretary for Defense. He is a significant pillar in the current government, and I don't feel, genuinely speaking, that the current government would be willing to take it away, whereas I think it was only significant thing that fellow did, even when he was a ranking member of the National Assembly.
Thank you. May I ask you both to render your closing remarks in the tongue that you speak other than English? I've been asking the guests on the CSA Fireside to do that. So, I mean, whichever one you feel most comfortable with. And if you want to just drop the translation shortly after, so I know what you've said, should also do. Right? Mark, I'm going to cut that part of this clip and circulate. So, you've been great panelists. You have been forthright and clear in your responses. And I sincerely appreciate, personally, whenever I do this, I feel like I get a sort of classroom experience in learning about the different cultures and nations, rather, of the Commonwealth. So thank you very much. All right, who wants to start first?
I will let the ladies go first.
Okay, not that my Swahili is good, so I will just stick to English. I know he will do a very good Swahili sanifu, so I don't want to put myself out there for that. But I want to say thank you very much, Benjamin and CSA, at large for giving us the opportunity to serve first, and also to be here today to be speaking about some of the challenges that the young people face, students and young people. And I think this is a very good conversation that needs to go on for a very long time, even after your exit in office. Because then, when young people access this kind of information that's broken down to their understanding and not using ambiguous words and listening to things they relate to, then there's a different shift. There's a shift in how they see things, there's a shift in how they can actually do things. And one of the suggestions that I would have is to now starting having conversations that affect students, particularly in different platforms. For example, accommodation, that's a very serious thing. And so just find country representatives to drop or talk about accommodation. So some of the recommendations that they need to put together. And from these talks, you can actually develop a policy and sign them with the particular minister and see how you can work towards it. So then it just doesn't end from having a conversation, but it goes deep down into making sure that whatever you've done or you've started ends in a very good in very good hands. And that's why we say, Benjamin, we will hold you accountable in the future when this is not a success. So just make sure it's a success. And thank you very much for having me here today.
Thank you, Shereen. Jamie.
Well, allow me, I will start with thanking Shireen. Thank you so much for being available for today's conversation. In most spaces, when we call on those who have gone before us to come and join the conversation, sometimes they might not be available, but you have made the time, you have committed your wisdom. I do take your nuggets of wisdom, and I'll be looking forward to having more conversations. I am in Nairobi. I'm sure you might be in Nairobi. So maybe we can grab coffee sometimes, and maybe Benjamin will join us virtually for the same as well. Secondly, allow me to appreciate and to note how much of a deep honor it is for me to join this podcast today as CSA Country Representative for the Republic of Kenya, as well to note with how much enthusiasm I'm taking up my roles. Shalom, you might be aware that I've only been in office for just a week, and it's turning out to be quite an adventure. I'm appreciating the nature in which I'm facing crisis and having to work with timelines. It's my cup of tea. Finally, I think is just to let way into the future as we look forward. I think we need to remember that we are a part of a huge global community that shares common aspirations and challenges, and that together we can achieve great things. So I'm very confident that with the support of each of us playing a significant role in supporting the aspirations of the CSA, then we can enhance the relevance and the impact that CSA have in individual countries, in regions, and in even the farthest of corners of this world. Finally, Benjamin, thank you so much for being a wonderful moderator. Thank you as well for preparing us for what was coming this way. Let me promise you, this is the first live interview where I've been presented with questions before I actually came to the podcast. The others were just like missiles coming my way. Thank you so much for being a wonderful moderator, and as well, thank you so much for being an incredible and fantastic chairperson for the CSA. Finally, we are done. Thank you so much, and may God bless you. And as well, note how much of an honor it is for us as the Republic of Kenya to be the first African nation to host His Majesty King Charles III on his first official visit to Africa. And as well, I note with sheer gratitude the numbers of young people that were at the residence of the British High Commissioner yesterday in the afternoon for the reception of King Charles III. It was quite a sprawling number of young people, and that speaks into the future that the Commonwealth has and the strength that we have in the future, having young people on board and engaged significantly. Let us fight disenfranchisement. Let us fight stereotypes. Let us fight all this social negative part of building a society. But let us focus on the keyword. Kudos and thank you so much.
I need something from somebody. I need something, even a paragraph. Please, let me hear it.
Asante sana Benjamin kwa kutupa nafasi hii kuzungumza na vijana. Tunashukuru na tunatamani sana ufike Kenya na utembelee vijana.
And
Asante.
what was that?
Well, Benjamin, if you were in the country, we would call you Benja. That's how we call those who are called Benjamin locally. So I start off, Benja, shukran sana kwa kuwa nasi. Tuomba kuwa kile ambacho tumekifanya leo, mazungumzo ambayo tumekuwa nayo hapa kwa leo, yataweza kuwa ishara kwa vijana wengineo kwenye jumuiya na Afrika yote na the Commonwealth yote, madola ya mataifa. Yeah, that's what we call Commonwealth, right? Commonwealth is called madola ya mataifa. So tunatarajia kwamba itakuwa ishara, vijana tushikane, tuwezeshe CSA kufikia matumaini yake.
From now on, neither of you are allowed to call me Benjamin. You call me Benja.
Benja, yeah, that's
Call
it.
me from
Benja,
now.
Benja, not Benja. Benja.
Benja. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. And until our next episode, take care and walk good.
Kwa heri.